My husband kept coming home smelling like cheap perfume and tried to convince me it was mine. I don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll start with some context. I, 41 female, have Meniere's disease. I've had it for over 20 years. It's an inner ear disorder that causes vertigo attacks. When they hit, the room spins, I get nauseous, and I can't even stand up without feeling like I'll pass out. The main trigger is excessive salt. So, I just make sure I use salt alternatives in my food, and it's worked out just fine. But my other trigger is strong scents, especially cheap, overpowering perfumes. Because of that, I'm extremely careful about what I wear. I've used the same subtle, soft floral perfume for years, and even then, only one light spritz. And again, it's worked out fine, and up until recently, I have kept the attacks under control. My husband, 41 male, knows all of this. He's seen me stuck on the bathroom floor more than once because of a vertigo episode. About 4 months ago, I noticed something strange. Once a week, sometimes twice, my husband would come home from work smelling strongly of perfume. Not a light scent. Not something that could linger in the air. This was strong. Sweet, musky, almost headache-inducing. The kind you smell before you even see the person wearing it. The first time, I casually asked, "Did you hug someone wearing perfume or something?" He laughed and said, "That's probably you. You're wearing perfume today." I immediately knew that wasn't true. I had the day off and hadn't left the house and didn't feel the need to wear perfume. And even if I did, it wouldn't be that pungent. I reminded him of that, and he shrugged it off and said maybe it was leftover on his jacket from me. I let it go. The second time, the smell was even stronger. He walked past me in the hallway and I had to sit down because the room started spinning. I asked again, more directly this time, "Why do you smell like perfume?" He rolled his eyes and said, "You're imagining it. You're sensitive to smells. It's your perfume." I reminded him again that I don't wear strong perfume, that I physically can't, that we've had multiple conversations about this because of my vertigo. He sighed like I was being dramatic and said, "I don't know what you want me to say." After that, I started paying attention. It happened regularly, usually on Thursdays. Same strong, cheap perfume. Same dismissive response. Sometimes he'd even joke about it, saying things like, "Maybe you're overdoing it with the perfume again," while smirking. Each time, my body reacted before my brain did. Dizziness. Nausea. That awful spinning sensation. And each time, he acted like I was the problem. What hurt the most wasn't even the smell, it was the gaslighting. The way he used my medical condition against me. The way he made me doubt my own senses while knowing full well that strong scents can make me sick. One night, after he came home reeking of it again, I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He went straight to the bathroom, showered immediately, and threw his clothes into the washing machine instead of the hamper. I wish I could say I confronted him calmly, or that there was some dramatic, empowering moment where I finally stood up for myself. But once again, I didn't push it any further because I was getting nowhere. My final straw came about 3 weeks later. He came home late again, same day of the week, same routine. The second he walked through the door, the smell hit me. That same strong, cheap perfume, thick enough that it felt like it coated the air. My body reacted instantly. This one was bad and it hit me hard. The room tilted hard to the left. My ears rang. My stomach lurched. I tried to grab the edge of the table to steady myself, but my hands didn't cooperate. The next thing I remember is the sound of something cracking and my husband shouting my name. I had fallen. I hit my head on the edge of the table on the way down. To his credit, he panicked. Full-on panic. He was on the floor next to me in seconds, shaking, apologizing, asking me to stay awake. He called 911 with shaking hands and kept saying, "This is my fault, this is my fault," over and over again. The ambulance ride is a blur. Bright lights, voices asking me questions, someone holding my hand while I tried not to throw up from the vertigo. At the hospital, they ran tests. CT scan. Neurological checks. Everything came back normal. No bleeding, no serious injury, just a nasty concussion and a reminder that my vertigo episodes can be dangerous. They kept me for observation for several days to make sure the concussion didn't worsen. Physically, I'm okay now. Headaches faded. Dizziness back to my usual baseline. I was discharged with strict instructions to rest and avoid triggers. Something that felt bitterly ironic given the situation. Emotionally, I'm not okay. My husband visited every day. He cried. He held my hand. He apologized again and again. But not once did he mention the perfume. Not once did he admit where it came from or why it kept happening. Even after watching me fall and crack my head open because of it. That's when I realized something that scared me more than the fall itself. Even when his actions sent me to the hospital, he still chose to lie. Someone who truly loves you does not repeatedly expose you to something that makes you sick, and then pretend it's all in your head. After I was released from the hospital, I did end up going back home with my husband. Not because everything was suddenly okay, but because I was exhausted, concussed, and didn't have the emotional energy to blow up my entire life while my head was still pounding. We barely spoke. He hovered around me at first, overly careful, asking if I needed water or food, flinching every time I swayed even slightly. I answered in one-word responses. The trust was gone, and he could feel it. The house felt tense and hollow, like we were roommates pretending not to notice the cracks in the walls. Then he went back to work. And something strange happened. The smell stopped. No cheap perfume. No overpowering cloud when he walked through the door. No vertigo spiked the moment he got close to me. For the first time in months, I could sit on the couch without bracing myself. If anything, that made my stomach drop even more. Because if it had really been my perfume, if I had been imagining it like he claimed, then why did it suddenly disappear? I didn't ask questions. I was done trusting his answers. Instead, I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal making that call, like I was stepping outside my own life and watching someone else do it. But I needed facts. I needed the truth in black and white, not twisted through gaslighting and half-smiles. It didn't take long. Within a week, the PI had confirmation of what I already suspected. My husband was having an affair. An ongoing one. The same woman for months. Hotel meetings. Dinners. Hand-holding in parking lots. All carefully documented. But there was more. The PI also discovered that shortly after my hospital stay, my husband had signed up for a 24-hour gym, one located conveniently between his workplace and our home. The pattern was obvious once it was laid out for me. He'd leave work, meet her, then stop at the gym afterward. Shower. Change. Wash away the perfume. Then come home smelling like soap and deodorant, acting like nothing had ever happened. The reason the scent disappeared wasn't because the affair ended. It was because he adapted. He watched me get carried out of our home on a stretcher, saw me lying in a hospital bed with a concussion, and instead of ending the affair or telling the truth, he just got better at hiding it. That realization broke something in me. Not just because he cheated, but because he had been willing to risk my health, my safety, my life. And when the consequences became real, his solution wasn't remorse. It was strategy. I'm sitting with the PI's report in my hands as I write this. Photos. Dates. Times. Proof he can't explain away. I left the PI's office with the report sitting in my bag, heavy like a brick. My hands were still shaking from reading it over and over, each line confirming what my gut already knew. I felt hollow, detached, like I was moving underwater. I wanted to confront him when he got home, but I knew I needed a plan first. I needed to finish getting my ducks in a row before I said anything. Later that day when he came home, he got careless. He usually guards his phone like it's holding government secrets. But for the first time in a long time, he left his phone unattended on his nightstand and started to watch football in the living room. I smiled big because I knew that nothing could distract him during the game. I could walk in the living room in the buff, and he would not budge, and I used that to my advantage. I told him I was going to go take a shower. He barely looked up to acknowledge me. His phone was locked, but he's not very creative with passwords. His birthday year. The Messages app was already open. Her name was saved as something painfully ordinary. Just a first name. No emojis. No hearts. Like that somehow made it cleaner. It didn't. The most recent message from her said, "Did you make it home without the drama?" He had replied, "Yeah. Showered first." She didn't notice anything. I scrolled. There were months of messages. Flirting. Explicit plans. Photos. Complaints about me that made my stomach twist. He called me fragile. High maintenance. A buzzkill. Then I saw the messages that made my hands go numb. From him. She's super sensitive to smells because of her ear thing. Like, strong scents literally mess her up. Her reply. LOL, seriously? That's inconvenient. Him. Tell me about it. She acts like it's life or death. I felt bile rise in my throat. Then came the messages dated the night I fell. Her. Did she freak out again? Him. Yeah. Vertigo. She went down hard. Hit her head. Had to go to the hospital. Her. OMG. And then the one that shattered whatever denial I still had left. Her message. Guess I'll just spray more next time, gotta make sure she smells it. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Then she followed it up with, I mean, what's the worst that happens? She tips over again. His reply came a minute later. Careful. You'll kill her. Don't joke about that. Her response. Relax, it's a joke. But hey, would it be the worst thing if next time She hit her head again and just didn't wake up? Then we don't have to hide and we can be together. I had to sit down. These weren't misunderstandings. These weren't careless words. They mocked my medical condition. They joked about my injury. About my death. And he didn't stop her. He didn't defend me. He didn't end it. He participated. In that moment, I understood something terrifyingly clearly. This wasn't just an affair. This was cruelty. Calculated. Informed. Willing to put me in harm's way. And then laugh about it. I forwarded the text thread to myself, deleted the evidence, and put his phone back exactly where I found it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I went back out into the living room, and I looked at him and realized I was staring at a stranger. Someone who knew my triggers. Who watched me get sick. Who saw me leave our home in an ambulance. And who still chose betrayal and mockery over my safety. And I knew with absolute certainty that my marriage was over. The morning after he left for work, I called out of work with a family emergency, searched for divorce attorneys. By noon, I was sitting in a quiet law office that smelled faintly of coffee and old books, clutching a folder so thick it barely closed. My hands were steady in a way that surprised me. It was like my body had finally caught up with what my mind already knew. The attorney was a man in his late 40s, sharp eyes, commanding voice. He asked me to start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about my inner ear disorder. About the vertigo attacks. About the cheap perfume. The gaslighting. The fall. The ambulance. The hospital stay. I slid the discharge papers across the desk, highlighted notes about triggered vertigo episode, head trauma, and concussion monitoring. Then I handed him the PI's report. He read carefully, methodically. Dates times photos. The gym membership. The hotel receipts. The pattern of behavior. Finally, I showed him the screenshots from his phone. The attorney went very still. He reread the messages about my condition. The jokes. The comment about it being more than a concussion next time. When she looked up, her expression had changed completely. This, he said slowly, tapping the page, is not just infidelity. He explained my options in plain, unemotional terms. Yes, our state is no fault, but fault still matters when it comes to leverage. The documented affair. The deliberate deception. The proof that he knowingly exposed me to a medical trigger. The hospital records tying his behavior to physical harm. All of this, he said, stacking the papers neatly, puts you in a very strong position. He talked about marital assets. The house. His retirement accounts. The joint savings. How infidelity combined with reckless endangerment could influence settlement negotiations. He used phrases like gross misconduct and bad faith behavior. Then he leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. Your husband didn't just cheat on you. He endangered you. And there is a paper trail. He asked if I wanted to pursue an aggressive strategy. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. I want to take him to the cleaners. I want him to feel consequences. He nodded once. No judgment. Just resolve. We discussed filing immediately. Requesting exclusive use of the home. Freezing certain accounts. Ensuring all communication goes through counsel. When I left his office, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. I'm not spiraling anymore. I'm not doubting my senses. I'm not questioning whether I'm overreacting. I was gaslit. I was endangered. And now I'm done. The paperwork is already in motion. My plan was to go home, wait until he got off work and confront him with paper copies of the text message on the kitchen table, and then go from there. But it didn't turn out that way. He came home from work that evening like nothing was wrong. Briefcase down, keys in the bowl, that familiar hum like we were still playing house. I was sitting on the couch, knees pulled to my chest, staring at a piece of paper that felt heavier than anything the PI handed me. The medical bill. I have lousy health insurance, so they didn't cover much. $50,347.18. That was the amount printed in bold at the bottom. The part they didn't cover. The part that was now mine. I was crying when he walked in. Real, ugly crying. The kind where your chest hurts, and you can't catch your breath. He rushed over immediately. Hey, what's wrong? Are you dizzy? Did something happen? I handed him the bill with shaking hands. He read it, his eyebrows knit together, and for a moment he actually looked concerned. That's a lot, he said quietly. I thought, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. He sighed and rubbed my shoulder like he was soothing a child. And then he said it. Well, maybe in the future, you should be more careful about the perfumes you buy, just to avoid another incident. Something inside me snapped. I stood up so fast the room tilted, but I didn't care. Before he could react, before he could finish that sentence, I slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the room. His head turned with the force of it, and he stumbled back a step, hand flying to his cheek. He stared at me shocked. I was shaking. Not from vertigo this time, but from rage. "Don't you dare," I screamed. "Don't you dare put this on me." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. "I know about her," I said. "I know about the affair. I know about the hotels, the gym, the showers, the lies." His face drained of color. "I know you told her about my condition," I continued, tears streaming down my face now. "I read the messages. I read you mocking me, calling me dramatic, letting her joke about spraying more perfume, about me dying." His mouth opened and closed like he couldn't find the words. "You watched me get taken out of this house in an ambulance," I said, my voice breaking, "and instead of stopping, you just learned how to hide it better." "I didn't think," he started. "No," I cut him off. "You did think. You just didn't care." I shoved the medical bill into his chest. "This is the price of your affair. This is the price of your gaslighting. This is the price of you deciding my health was an inconvenience." He started crying then. Real tears. He tried to reach for me. "I never wanted you hurt," he said. "It was just jokes. She didn't mean it." I stepped back. "You let someone joke about my death," I said coldly. "And you stayed." That's when I told him. "I've consulted a lawyer." He froze. "Divorce papers are being filed. Communication goes through my attorney from now on. You're not sleeping here tonight or ever again." He begged. He apologized. He swore it meant nothing. That he loved me. That he'd end it. That he'd do anything. But it was too late. Because love doesn't mock your illness. Love doesn't endanger your life. Love doesn't cost over $50,000 and a concussion. I watched him pack a bag and leave the house that night. For the first time in months, the air was clean. And I could finally breathe. I didn't see it happen in person. But I heard all about it. 2 days after our confrontation, my attorney had him served with divorce papers. At work. Not quietly. Not discreetly. Right in the middle of the office, during regular business hours. And the timing couldn't have been more precise if I'd planned it myself. He was in a conference room with several co-workers. And her. The woman he'd been shacking up with and risking my health for, is his secretary. How original. According to multiple people who reached out to me. She'd been sitting right next to him when the process server walked in, asked for him by full name, and handed him the envelope. Divorce papers. Infidelity cited. Medical documentation attached. Attorney letterhead impossible to miss. The room went dead silent. Someone apparently asked, "Is everything okay?" He couldn't answer. His face went white. His hands shook so badly he dropped the papers. And that's when things really started unraveling. Because HR was already aware. My attorney had advised me to submit a formal complaint, not out of revenge but documentation. An affair between a supervisor and his direct subordinate violated company policy. Add in the fact that company time, resources, and travel had been used. That turned it into a liability nightmare. Within hours, both of them were pulled into separate meetings. By the end of the week, the consequences were clear. He was placed on immediate administrative leave while an internal investigation was conducted. His access to company systems was revoked. His work trips were audited. Expense reports flagged. The gym membership tied to work hours didn't help him either. His secretary, the woman who joked about my death, was terminated outright. No severance. No reference. HR documented inappropriate conduct, misuse of company time, and unprofessional behavior. Her desk was cleared the same day. As for him, he wasn't fired immediately. But when the investigation concluded, his career there was effectively over. He was allowed to resign quietly or be terminated for cause. He chose to resign. That choice cost him his bonus, his stock options, his leadership position, his reputation. Word spread fast, especially when people realized why the divorce was happening and that I'd been hospitalized. People stopped returning his calls. Invitations disappeared. And the woman he blew up his life for? She didn't stick around. Once the secrecy was gone and the consequences were real, blocked him. Changed her number and vanished. The air in my home is still clean. And for the first time in a long time, my life is too. I thought serving him would be the hard part. I was wrong. That was just the opening move. Once the divorce proceedings officially began, everything shifted into legal chess. My attorney warned me ahead of time. When people lose control of the narrative, they try to regain it through paperwork. His attorney's first move was predictable. They filed a response objecting to the characterization of his behavior as reckless endangerment, and tried to frame the affair as irrelevant to the dissolution of the marriage. They argued that my hospitalization was an unfortunate accident, and that my medical condition was pre-existing and unrelated to marital conduct. My attorney didn't even flinch. He responded with exhibits. Hospital records explicitly noting trigger-induced vertigo. Timeline comparisons between his affair meetups and my documented episodes. Screenshots of text messages acknowledging my condition before the fall. The PI report establishing pattern and intent. Then he added a line that made his attorney pivot fast. Respondent knowingly exposed petitioner to a medically documented trigger and subsequently concealed said exposure. This is not incidental. It is willful. After that, the tone changed. His attorney tried to negotiate quietly. They proposed a clean split. Sell the house, split proceeds 50-50. Each party keeps their retirement accounts. No spousal support. Each pays their own legal fees. Medical bills considered shared marital debt. My attorney slid the proposal back across the table, untouched. Our counteroffer was blunt. I retain the house outright. He pays the full remaining medical bill. He pays spousal support for a defined term. I keep a larger share of marital assets. He covers my legal fees. Non-disparagement clause with penalties. His attorney objected immediately, calling it punitive. My attorney's response was ice cold. This isn't punishment. This is mitigation of harm. They tried another angle, claiming I was emotionally unstable after the concussion and therefore misinterpreting the text messages. My attorney requested sworn testimony from the PI and moved to include the messages in full unredacted. That shut that down. Then they tried to minimize the affair. It was consensual. It didn't affect marital finances. It has no bearing on asset division. So my attorney produced expense reports. Hotel charges, gift purchases, meals, travel, all during work hours. All while I was at home dizzy, nauseous, and being told I was imagining things. The gym membership came up too. His attorney argued it was self-care. My attorney argued it was evidence of concealment. And the judge agreed it was relevant. At one point, his attorney tried to float mediation again, suggesting my demands were emotionally motivated. My attorney leaned forward and said, "My client was hospitalized. There is documentation. There are messages joking about her death. This is not emotion. This is evidence." That was the moment I saw his confidence crack. Behind the scenes, my ex started panicking. He emailed my attorney against advice, asking if I would be reasonable and stop trying to ruin him. That email was added to the file. By the time we reached the next hearing, his attorney wasn't fighting anymore. They were managing damage. The final negotiations came fast after that. He agreed to assume full responsibility for the medical debt, pay spousal support, transfer his interest in the house, cover my legal fees, accept a lopsided asset division, all to avoid a full trial where those messages would be read into public record. I signed the settlement with a steady hand, not because I was angry anymore, but because I was done being the person who absorbed harm quietly. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. What he lost wasn't just a wife. It was credibility, control, and the lie that he could hurt me without consequences. And for the first time since the perfume started showing up in my life, I felt safe. About 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was her, the mistress. She didn't scream. She didn't cry at first. Her voice was tight, rehearsed, like she'd practiced what she wanted to say. She told me she just wanted to explain. That she never meant for things to go this far. That she didn't know it would destroy so many lives. And then, inevitably, she blamed me. She said I ruined her career. I ruined her relationship. I ruined her life by overreacting and taking things too far. That's when I finally found my voice. I told her, calmly and clearly, that she was a homewrecker who deserved what she got. I told her she knowingly slept with a married man, knowingly mocked a woman's medical condition, knowingly joked about increasing a trigger that sent me to the hospital. For fun, I said. You did it for fun. I reminded her that I had screenshots, dates, messages, medical documentation, that I had everything I needed to drag her into court for hospital costs and emotional distress, and that the only reason I hadn't was because I wanted peace. But don't confuse my restraint with weakness, I told her. I can change my mind. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, I topped it off with, by the way, find another perfume that doesn't make you smell like a cheap hooker. She hung up on me. She never called again. A few days later, my ex-husband tried. His number popped up on my screen, and for a moment, I felt that old reflex, the instinct to brace myself, to prepare to explain, to soften the blow. Instead, I answered and said nothing. He started apologizing immediately. Long, rambling sentences. Regret. Shame. How he'd lost everything. How he never meant for it to go this far. I stopped him. There is no room for you in my life anymore, I said. Not for explanations. Not for apologies. Not for guilt. He tried to say my name. I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to him. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. I had control over my attacks again. I had maybe 2 small attacks since I filed for divorce. And I considered that a win. My body was back to normal. Well, as normal as it can be. I met Owen at a farmer's market. The kind with tents lining the streets, fresh bread, vegetables and flowers everywhere, and the smell of roasted coffee beans drifting through the air. I was standing at a stall comparing different varieties of tomatoes when someone next to me said, "Those are incredible if you roast them low and slow." I turned and saw a man holding a small basket, clearly being deliberate about what he picked up and where he set it back down. He smiled, polite and a little shy, not crowding my space. We struck up a conversation about tomatoes, bread, and local produce, then moved on to talking about cooking. His passion was infectious, his humor gentle. I found myself lingering longer than I planned, walking with him from stall to stall, tasting jams and sampling cheeses. We started meeting regularly after that, coffee, more Sunday markets, movie nights. Slowly. No rush. No pressure. And for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about my past or my ex. I didn't tell him about my inner ear disorder right away. I didn't tell him about my ex. I just wanted to enjoy the calm, the newness, the normality of someone who didn't carry secrets and betrayal with him. But the day came when I had to tell him. I told him everything. My ex, the betrayal, the hospital, the Meniere's disease, the vertigo attacks triggered by strong scents. My hands shook as I spoke, worried this would change how he saw me. Worried that I would be too broken for him. He didn't flinch. He didn't make me feel like a burden. He didn't back out of the relationship, even after I gave him an out. Instead, he took my hands in his and said, "Thank you for trusting me with something that personal. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Not even a little, and none of it changes the way I feel about you." Over time, love grew quietly, deeply, without the fear and betrayal of my past. A year after we started dating, he proposed. 4 months after the proposal, we got married in a small ceremony surrounded by fresh flowers, clean air, and people who genuinely cared about our happiness. I still live with Meniere's disease. But I no longer live with someone who would use it against me. And that has made all the difference.